There was a time that we did something that I called the retreat, where when the kids were smaller, we decided that we would just like I took time off of work and thought we're just not going to leave home for a while and see how that goes. I wanted to see what it was like to not have advertising influence, to not have television influence. I just wanted to know where my mind would go and where my kids' minds would go if we didn't have these outside. They, my friend called it Biodome 2000.
As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. Hey Posse, I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse, bringing vegans together to help animals everywhere. Just a few announcements. First, if you enjoy being part of the Vegan Posse, consider becoming a financial supporter. We keep our overhead low, but we do have recording and other operating expenses, and any contribution is appreciated. Send your donations via Venmo or PayPal to Vegan Posse. Any amount is welcome. You are the posse. Come to Vegan Summerfest in Johnstown, Pennsylvania from July 9th through the 13th, 2025. I'll be speaking along with lots of other amazing people. That is, when we're not stuffing our faces with delicious, all vegan food prepared under the direction of previous Vegan Posse guest, Chef Mark Reinfeld. It's going to be epic. And when you register, make sure to let them know that you're part of the Vegan Posse, and they'll take extra special care of you. If you've got questions or topic suggestions for the monthly series Posse Talk with Jen Hawk, email them to veganposse.email@gmail.com. And now that I've completed my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, I am accepting new coaching and counseling clients. If you're ready to change your life from the inside out, contact me directly at christinembenson@gmail.com. It's not too late to make the vegan women's fiction classic, Marrying Myself, an international bestseller. Pick up a copy on Amazon or check out my website, christinemelaniebenson.com, for all the info. Together, we can normalize veganism through the arts. And now for this week's episode with arguably the most effective variety of vegan activists, cookbook author and all-around Renaissance woman, Jan Brandenburg. Her cookbook, the Modern Mountain Cookbook, features all the best in vegan comfort food from a true Appalachian perspective. Jan's got an inspiring personal story and, as you'll hear, lots of fascinating off-the-beaten-path experiences. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Jan, and I think you will too. So without further ado, here it is. Jan, welcome to the Vegan Posse. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
I am.
Good. Yeah. No
Ready to roll.
hesitation. I love when people have no hesitation. So, yeah, why don't you tell us your story? What first brought you to the vegan path?
Well, I was a vegetarian starting in about 1995. I always remember because my child was one. And that was just like a strange story. I just saw a movie, made me make the connections. And so then I really did, even that early, I did do a lot of vegan cooking. And it was like kids and soccer. And, somehow it wasn't as easy back then as it is now. And it was a learning process.
What part of, let me just interrupt to ask, what part of the country were you living in? Like, where was this, in West Virginia? Okay.
No, I'm in Kentucky.
Oh,
and,
Kentucky. Okay.
I pretty much always lived in Kentucky. I lived in North
Whereabouts in
Carolina
Kentucky?
for a while. Eastern Kentucky.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Irving, Kentucky. A lot of people have heard of Red River Gorge. So I grew up very close to the gorge. A lot of people come from all over the world to hike there. It's very beautiful.
Okay.
Um,
And in fact,
and it
my
is.
grad school, coincidentally, my grad school program is based in Kentucky, University of the
Oh,
Cumberlands.
really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I know where that is. Yeah,
You do?
yeah.
Okay.
And so that is Eastern Kentucky too. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll be
It's
there in
really
just a
beautiful
couple of
there too.
months for my graduation, in fact.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
may want to come on up to Berea, where I live
Yes.
now. Yeah,
Yes, yes. Maybe I'll be able
I
to
will
squeeze
definitely
in.
feed you some. I'll feed you some good vegan food if you come here.
Okay, okay. You may regret making that offer because I have my parents
I
with me,
won't.
but
I will not.
so what was the movie that you saw that helped you put the dots together to go vegetarian? Do you remember?
Oddly, it was the movie Seven, which is about the seven deadly sins. So it really is a very quirky story.
Yeah, that's a horror
But
movie, right?
well, yeah, suspense for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, it just made me think about cruelty is cruelty, regardless of whether it's human or animal.
That's so interesting. Really? So I haven't seen that movie, but is it
I
about
wouldn't
animals?
recommend it. Not at all. It's about people. It's not, but it just like my mind made that leap that day, and I just never went back.
Who did you see the
And then
movie with? Like, did it have a similar effect on the person you or people you saw the movie with?
no, no, not at all. I just saw it with my best friend from like middle school, and no, it did not have the same effect on her. But she does come and eat vegan food with me.
I mean,
She lives in Texas now.
does she realize that movie was a turning point for you? Did she know
I
about
think
the
so.
effect
I
it
mean,
had at the time?
I think she does. It's such a weird story that I hardly ever tell anyone that because it's like I think it would only make sense to me for some reason. But yeah, I think that I've told it to other people and they
I mean,
get it.
yeah,
But
paint the picture a little bit, just a little bit more. So it's a suspense movie, and what's the plot line?
it was a movie, and it was the gluttony one that really got me.
Oh,
Because they were making this person eat, fattening him up
oh, okay,
like we do the.
okay.
So it just
Oh,
that just really stuck with.
interesting.
Yeah, think about foie
Wow.
gras. It
Yeah,
was kind of like that. Not that I've ever had foie gras in my entire life, but that's what got in my head, and
yeah,
so
yeah. And
that was
go
that was just a turning
vegetarian?
point for me
Did you go vegetarian immediately, or how long
immediately.
did it take you? Really? Okay, so you were
Immediately,
thinking this as you were watching
yeah,
it.
yes,
Very
yes. I was just
interesting.
like, no more. Yep, and that really is what did it. Even though it seems such a peculiar story, I know.
And that was in 1995, you said?
Um, yes,
Wow.
yes,
So 30 years ago at this point. That's crazy.
yeah.
And
And
then,
there was like a book around called the Hallelujah Diet at that time too, which was very strictly vegan, and that just kind of circulated in my church circle, and so I did a lot of vegan cooking, and because I love to cook, I helped a lot of people through that who really wanted to do it for their health, for other reasons. So we would fall back on that, but I was not strictly vegan until 2006, even though I probably spent a few years that I was completely vegan before that. But in 2006, I just managed to like get over the hump. I can do this, and so that's the way it's been ever since then.
yeah, what was it that prompted you to make this, transition from vegetarian to strictly vegan or purely vegan?
Well, the more that I learned about like the dairy industry, and I went vegetarian for that reason, but then of course I'm a reader, so I kept doing my own research and investigating it, and it's kind of like a sweater. You start to pull at the string, and pretty soon you're like, well, I can't wear that again. So you just unravel the whole lifestyle, and you just know that that's where you want to go.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot. With me, I didn't go there enthusiastically. I went there reluctantly, where it was
Yeah,
unraveled, and I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to do this. And then, of course, it became, like the best decision, the best path, that I
it
remain very
is the
grateful
best
for.
decision. Yeah, it's a very joyful lifestyle, I find.
I totally agree. It didn't seem that way at first to me before before I made the
Now,
leap.
did you go vegetarian for a totally different reason?
No, I had been vegetarian for quite some time for the same reasons, similar reasons, the animals. To me, it was a question
Yeah,
of, sure, if it were a
it is
choice
animals.
between starving to death and eating an animal, I'd probably eat the animal. But in this day and age, how can I justify that choice when
Yeah.
there's so many other options? And so that was as far as my thinking went. But similar to you, the more I learned and the more I read, but yes, I was just saying that I went vegetarian. Just how can I justify killing animals when it's not necessary? And then, kind of like you, the more I learned, the more information that started to seep in. For me, it was initially about the egg industry. And then it was only a little later that I really learned about the dairy industry. And now, to me, I think the dairy industry is the absolute worst of all of them, if you have to rank them. Um,
And
but how was that change for you?
whenever you first start,
Yeah, go ahead.
when I went completely vegan,
Yeah,
um, well, I one of my kids got me a subscription to Veg News, the publication,
yeah.
and that just like kind of gave me enough support to like it gave me more products. I don't live close to a Whole Foods,
Mm,
it's like an hour away,
mm.
um, but I just learned how to buy enough things to manage until I could get to a different place, and so it really wasn't that bad. And because I really enjoy a challenge in cooking, so if somebody said I really love mac and cheese, I'm like, I'm going to make the best mac and cheese because that's what I love to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't that hard. And one of the ways that I have always handled having a family that are omnivores is that I pretty much do all the cooking. So I just took a different approach. I'm like, you don't have to accommodate me. I'm going to accommodate you, and I'm going to show you how delicious this food is.
And what did they make of it all? What did they think of, number one, your transition and of the food itself?
They love the food, so I really get no complaints. Everybody, I do all the holidays for our whole family. We have substitutions for everything. I can make mac and cheese. I can make skillet corn, cornbread, all of the things that are traditional foods for holidays. I can come up with a vegan version of them, and many of them are in my cookbook. Um, but yeah, they don't mind at all. They love to come here and eat.
And what about, how many kids do you have?
I've got two kids. Um, they are not vegetarian. Their wives are both vegetarian, and so their households are vegetarian or vegan if mama is visiting.
Interesting. So
But
it's two boys, in other words. Two
two
men, I
boys,
suppose. At this
yes,
point, they're men.
yes,
They're officially
yeah,
grown.
yeah,
But their wives
and
and their wives are
yep,
vegan, you said?
they're both vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
Yes, they are. I don't think anybody is vegan, although they're very well versed in vegan cooking, and so it's not difficult for them. If I come over for dinner, I can expect a vegan meal. They're not going to have any trouble with that. Both of them cook.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's really not an issue. Now my extended family, they of course could not prepare anything, but that's why I do all the cooking and they show up. I've always joked, they either really hate to cook or my cooking is really good. But
or both.
yeah, we have a lot of family gatherings. Yeah, Yeah, but nobody's ever argued with me about who's going to host Christmas or Thanksgiving.
Well, so how old were your sons when you went vegan?
1-year-old and 4.
Oh,
No, vegetarian for those
okay,
ages.
okay.
So 2006, would have been 12 and 11 or something like
Yeah.
that.
So did they grow up mostly vegetarian slash vegan, would you say?
They did. They did.
Very interesting. And what
Yeah.
about their dad? Is that I don't know if he's your husband, if you're still married
I'm
to him.
not married,
Okay.
but the father of my children was vegetarian while we were together
Uh-huh.
and never really had a problem with it. And we used to kind of joke about, like, well, should we make them let their own choices? And I said, well, I mean, would we let them smoke a pack of cigarettes? It could be their choice, but we
Exactly.
know it's really bad for them. So let's not do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
As if
we
yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have
Yeah,
kids,
that
but yeah,
was
as if we don't try actively to instill values in our
yeah,
children, you know. We
yeah.
don't call it brainwashing when
And
we raise them, with values. Yeah. Um,
but it was really, we had some funny things that happened when they were kids because the younger one was always so worried that anything. I mean, he asked if everything had meat in it. They would tell me, I offered Cody a bowl of cereal, and he said, "Does it have meat in it?"
so he was
So
on
they were,
board
and
when he was a kid.
yes, and I think both of my kids mainly eat a vegetarian diet. I think they just get away from that occasionally when they are in groups of people that have provided this food for them.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
uh, that they don't feel the same level of commitment that I do, but they eat mostly vegetarian diets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just so that's your family. How would you say that going vegan affected, your personal relationships in general, or even vegetarian?
I really, I think I've always been a little different, and so they're like, okay, it's just one more odd thing that Jan is going to do.
Mm,
And
mm,
so I think that a lot of people did think it was peculiar, but it was kind of par for the course for me.
mm,
And nobody really said that much about it. And I don't get a lot of negativity, even though I've lived in very rural places my whole life. Um, People are curious, but when you bring them food, they don't
they'll
care.
eat it. Yeah.
If you bring them some chocolate chip cookies and they think they taste good, they're like, "This is really good. How'd you do that?"
Right.
So
Right.
I just have never. Even when I was a manager of a pharmacy in Irvine, and I always had like a big Christmas dinner for all of my employees, and it was completely vegan, and they loved it. They always were curious to know what is she going to make. So
That's so
it was just
interesting. Yeah.
it's just part of who I am, and people are used to me being a little different, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a common theme I hear from a lot of the people I've had on the podcast is that we often do feel like outliers are just a little different in general, so maybe that makes it a little bit
Yeah,
easier to be different in, like you said, one additional way.
they're just like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
here's one more thing.
Yeah. So tell me so you grew up in Kentucky, in Eastern Kentucky?
Mhm.
And
Yep,
did you
I
ever
did.
think about the animals in our food system back then? Like how did your family eat when you were growing up?
Well, they were, pretty traditional meal preparers, I guess, but we did eat a lot of vegetables because both my grandparents had big gardens on both sides of my family. And so we had a lot of just meals of green beans and sliced tomatoes and cucumbers and cornbread.
Mm,
And those are still some of my very favorite foods.
mm,
I love green beans.
mm.
Um, but we did also, I don't know if you read in the cookbook, that I worked at a stockyards as a kid in the kitchen. Like they had sales once a week, and my family leased the restaurant inside of the stockyards. And so, that was very much plate lunch kind of things. But yes, I was very aware of what the animals were doing, but I don't think I made that transition as like a child because I
Mm-hmm.
was the 12-year-old dishwasher. I don't think I
Yeah.
made that leap of what was on my plate
Right.
until much later in life. But I always have been an animal lover. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you went vegan, okay, you were with your kid's father at the time. And
Hmm.
he was open to this, you said? Primarily, it sounds like because you were doing the cooking. So that gives you some power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That does, yeah, gives you some authority about the. But there was a time that we did something that I called the retreat, where when the kids were smaller, we decided that we would just like I took time off of work, which is probably the only time I've ever done in my whole life, and thought we're just not going to leave home for a while and see how that goes. I wanted to see what it was like to not have advertising influence, to not have television influence. I just wanted to know where my mind would go and where my kids' minds would go
When was
if
this?
we
Like
didn't have these outside.
what year was this that you did this?
They, well, my friend called it Biodome 2000, so it was 2000,
That's
the year 2000,
hilarious. And where did you
and
come up with this idea?
I don't know. I said I've always been a little different.
I love it
Um,
though.
so it was really cool. It was like kind of like stepping off the merry-go-round for a little while. We were really busy, and I think I just thought, what would it be like to not feel rushed? You're not going anywhere. You don't have to rush and get something done because you're going to be right here. And also, we didn't have anything except snail mail, and people could stop by. We told everybody who we knew. They're like, you can come by anytime. Anytime you want to drop by, you don't have to worry. We're going to be home. So my husband had to do all the shopping at that time. And he was very willing, because I was always home cooking. But, we read a lot. We had 2.5 acres and we were in the country, so we could, wherever our feet could take us, we could go. And so we had a lot of visitors. A lot of people were really curious about that. So I cooked a whole lot. We always did a big Sunday brunch because I knew that we would have a lot of visitors on Sunday.
Wow. So people really took you up on
But a
that
lot of people
offer
did.
to stop by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they wanted to know what was going on out there in the
That
biodome.
is so interesting. And so you had taken time off work for this experiment?
I took time off work for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How long
it was
how
an
long did
experiment.
you treat, so to speak? 2
2 months.
months. Wow.
So
Wow. What time of year?
January, February,
Wow.
because we started at the very beginning of the year.
And the
Yeah,
kids in
and we
school?
really had. Well, I homeschooled.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, until my kids went to college and to film school, they had never been to school. So just another box to check.
Yeah.
The odd
Yeah.
things that we did.
So
Yeah.
so what was it like? What were those 2
Um,
months like?
it was really, really relaxing. And you just don't realize how content you can be with just like, your basic needs being met until you don't have those outside pressures. I've read a lot of books about advertising too. And so I just really wanted to know, what's creating demand for products in my mind? Is it something I really want, or did somebody else plant that idea there?
Right. All
So
of
it
these
was just something I thought about.
Yeah, all these decisions that we think are our own decisions.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to know, and I wanted to know, were my children going to be really restless? Were they just going to have fun playing? I just wanted us to see what it was like.
Yeah, so what were the results? What did you discover?
Well, that we felt very content, that we had a lot of visitors and just haven't, we didn't watch any television. We only read books, and the one thing that they could do is they both love to make movies, the one Sunday go to film school. And so if they made a movie themselves, I would let them watch it on this television that was like this big.
And how old were they at
And
the
it's
time?
really an experience. Let's see, they were probably 6 and 9.
Wow.
They were 6 and 9.
Wow. What an
Yeah.
interesting
And we
experiment.
had it was. I mean, they laugh about when they tell people about that now, and they were like, was your mom crazy? I wasn't. I was just curious.
Yeah.
And we were definitely vegan during all of that time. Um, because that was a period when we were doing that, like following the Hallelujah diet.
Is that similar to
That was
like
strict.
what's also called the Daniel diet? Kind of the same? Is that
No,
no?
it is not.
Okay.
No, it's not. It was just a completely plant-based diet. And, it was kind of my first. I mean, I read a lot of other books like Neil Barnard, Food for Life. I really loved that one.
Uh-huh.
But this was just kind of, had a lot of recipes, and it was just like a little bit of a guideline for plant-based, which I knew, even as soon as I began to know anything about dairy and eggs, I knew that's where I wanted to go. It was just like a transition getting there.
Mm.
But being at home all the time made it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
You're not stuck somewhere trying to get something to eat for your children.
Right.
So
Right.
it was, yeah.
And so how did that experience affect your life going forward from there? The retreat
Well,
experience, I
it's
mean.
something you can kind of always go back to that. You can say, "Hey, I'm going to retreat for the day, and I'm going to turn everything off." And that you do realize that sometimes the things that you want are there for reasons outside of yourself.
Were there any things in particular that you realized, okay, this is not coming from a pure place of my own desires, but from marketing?
Well, really almost anything except groceries. We had running water and electricity, and it's to just let you know that when your mind gets to be a little bit calmer, when you're not having constant stimuli, that it's just really enjoyable, and it leads to a lot of contentment.
Mm.
Like a level of contentment is there that you might not know you have if you are constantly busy, but it's out there and it's waiting for you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I'm sure it helped too that you had community, you had your family, and it sounds like you had a whole community where people were stopping by and visiting and you weren't isolated.
Yes, yeah, right. We are a pretty big, messy Kentucky family, and people will drop in and visit for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a pharmacist by training, right? Is that right?
I am.
Yeah. So tell me about that path. Like what led you into pharmacy in the first place?
I knew I was going to do something medical. Mainly, I just wanted to be able to support myself.
Mhm.
You just never know when, you might just be called on to do that, which I did, and I needed to be able to raise my children. So I just wanted something that I felt like was a career path that I could always count on.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it has been. It hasn't always been pleasant. Retail pharmacy is not a place you ever want to go. Now I work in hospital, and it's a great job. Really, really it is. You still get to have a lot of one-on-one patient contact, and yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah. Is it interesting for you kind of intersecting with that world when on the one hand, you're in the vegan world where so much is about health on a more, natural, holistic level. And then there's, pharmaceuticals, which is a whole other approach to, you know, addressing
It
disease.
is. When I worked in retail, I got the opportunity to talk to people a lot about natural medicines, and it was a very small town, so people kind of knew that if you had a question about that, I was the pharmacist that you came to.
Yeah.
And also, you're just surprised at how sometimes people don't know at all that diet relates to their health. They really do not know. So, I looked at that as a chance for education, and still do, when I have one-on-one patient contact. So I look at it like I can work at this from another angle. I have access to patients, and I'm there if you need any information or suggestions for diet or anything. I'm not a dietitian, and so I never tried to cross that line. But people are curious, and when you get to know your patients, then that's an avenue that you can pursue.
Yeah. And do people seem to be interested in that angle? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, people are very curious about the fact that you could do this. I mean, some people think it just would be the hardest thing ever, and it's really not. It's really not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even where we live, if we can do it where we live, it can be done almost anywhere.
Right. And really, it's just, I mean, in terms of being in a rural location, I mean, if you're cooking at home, it's just as easy to cook vegan at home as it is to cook non-vegan. It's really just more about the challenges,
It
I
does.
would say, come more about the community and the social aspect of it, is what I would
Yes.
imagine. Yeah.
And like, last night we had a St. Patrick's Day dinner. And so I had a traditional Irish stew made vegan, shepherd's pie. I made some brown bread, some Guinness brown bread that did not really work out. It looked pretty, but won't try that one again. So I last minute made cornbread, and somebody brought some Irish pea salad because in Berea I do have like a small community of vegan friends, and so that's been really fun. That's been the first time ever in my
Wow.
life that I've had a few vegan friends.
Wow.
So it was really fun. So it is very much about community and sharing.
Yes, and now that you mention it, when I lived in Boston, I had a vegan St. Patrick's Day party. Now that I think about it, yes, I made a
Yeah,
vegan Irish stew and Irish soda bread. And yes, there was Guinness involved. I think Guinness had gone entirely vegan at that point. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So these vegan
I just
friends,
called my son to say,
go ahead.
I said, what is inside of this Guinness can? It's got that little plastic thing inside of it that just makes a lot of noise whenever you're pouring it out. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've interacted with Guinness, so I think I know what you're talking about. But yeah, I think it's to
Yeah.
make the carbonation or
Keep it
the
aerated.
texture, whatever.
Yeah.
So these vegan friends that you have, tell me this: are they self-created vegan friends? Like, did they go vegan because of you, or did you just find them?
No, we all found it. I moved to Berea about 5 years ago from the smaller town of Irvin, if one can be smaller than Berea. Um, and I was pretty active on Instagram, and we all found each other through Instagram.
Nice.
So all the friends that I made once I moved to this new town came from that, and because we posted vegan things all the time.
Wow. Wow.
So it just, yeah. In this case, the algorithm worked, and it just hooked all of us up together. And so I have like a little circle of about 10 vegan friends. One person happened to be right across from me, who's a professor at Berea College, and she just happened to be vegan. So she actually wrote the foreword for my book.
Oh, she's
Um,
the one.
but yeah, I was
Okay.
like, I have a vegan neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that I had a vegan neighbor.
Yeah, no, I read that. Yeah, that forward was so lovely and just so endearing, and it seems so serendipitous.
It was just a very exciting thing for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So tell us about your, cookbook path, because you've got this lovely cookbook called the Modern Mountain Cookbook. And I love comfort food. I mean, who doesn't? But just mountain culture and Appalachia. Well, tell me this. I've heard various
Yeah.
various instruction on how to pronounce that word. Even some people are very insistent that it's Appalachia. Some people say Appalachia, Appalachian. What's you're
Appalachia. It is
Appalachian? Yeah,
Appalachia.
yeah.
I'm in the Appalachia port.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Some people do. I've heard people say the Appalachian Mountains and things, but here it is Appalachia.
okay. That's my understanding. Yeah, I'm from up north, and there's the Appalachian Mountain Club, the AMC, which has network of hiking trails and cabins where you can stay. And so I've hiked
Yes.
some of those trails, but I think pretty much everybody up there says it the wrong way. So I have to think about it to say it Appalachia. So when did you obviously you always loved to cook, and it was important to you to, convert these recipes that you loved and these dishes that you loved and to make vegan versions of them, partly for the challenge and partly for, just sharing and enjoyment. So how serious have you, like, when did you decide to take your cooking to the next level and, put it out there in the world in this way?
Well, I always just kept, always just kept all the recipes. I was always reading. I have a lot of cookbooks, and I always really love to read cookbooks, and I love to read their stories too. Um, And so I had this collection of recipes, and I was just driving to work one day and heard about UK Press, and I thought, I think that I'm going to do that. I'd like to write a cookbook. I always wanted to write something, and I have published some other things. I've published in pharmacy journals. I published in a little magazine called Welcome Home when I was a stay-at-home, well, a homeschooling mom, put it that way. I was never completely stay-at-home except during the retreat, and so I thought I'm just gonna send this person that they mentioned her by name. I'm just going to send her an email. So I did. And she was like, yes, that sounds like a great idea. And so then I just got really busy. And when I submitted it, they accepted it,
That's amazing.
much to
That's
my
amazing.
surprise.
Because as an author
It
myself,
was.
I know what it takes to bring a book out into the world, and you just did it. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah. What was the process like? How
Yeah.
did you
It took a lot of,
go ahead?
it took a lot of going back and forth with them. And then, I mean, I really knew it didn't take me long to get my chapters organized or anything like that. And then, a lot of the recipes just naturally have a story that goes with them.
Mm.
Um, we're kind of storytellers in Appalachia, so um, it just came together. There's a lot of editing involved because maybe I'm not the greatest writer, but a lot the recipes are tried and true. I mean, everything that is in that cookbook, I make it
And how
on a pretty regular basis because I feed a lot of people.
so who do you feed these days now that your kids are out of the house?
Well, they're not so far away that they don't come back quite a bit. And then we really do like the group that I have here. We really gather at each other's houses a lot.
Mm,
We have almost probably every week we get together
mm.
to eat. I take food to work all the time. If they don't have chocolate chip cookies, they're very disappointed. If the cookies run dry for any reason, um, and I always do like birthdays. It seems like there's always a birthday or a baby shower
Mhm.
or something. And then my mom is older, so I take her food whenever I cook. So she doesn't live, she lives about 20 minutes away or something. And so I take her food on a regular basis. And if I just end up with a lot of extra, I just walk down the street and give it to a neighbor.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So you definitely were a welcome addition to your neighborhood, it sounds like. That's the way to make
Yeah.
friends.
One of my neighbors the other day, she said, I noticed that you had a lot of cars at your house. I was thinking that we might get some left over
That's hilarious.
because they can tell when we're having a gathering here. Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so funny. So what is so number one, like, did you have any health issues before you went vegan, and how has your health journey been, or has that been a big part of your story?
Well, it coincided with a health issue that I had. When I was pregnant with my second child, I had melanoma,
Oh my
and it
goodness.
was just discovered. I just went in for an exam, and she's like, "You should have that mole looked at." But that really had nothing to do with why I chose the path. I chose the path, and then I realized, hey, this is probably really great for that reason too.
Yeah.
So I did have that health problem. That was, of course, in 1994, so it's been a very long time ago. It was early stages, and everything went fine after. But besides that, no, I've been really a healthy person, and I do attribute a lot of that to diet, exercise. I also am a yoga instructor.
Oh, you are. Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so
Okay.
yeah, yeah, it's a strange intersection of things.
Yeah. Well, the
But yeah, I've
yoga,
been
the
a
yoga and the
yoga
vegan
instructor since.
are the yoga and the vegan are not strange
Yeah.
intersections, but it's of course interesting that you found all
Well,
these things. Yeah.
surprisingly, um, there was no one else. I did two different teacher trainings. So I have my 500-hour certification, two different processes. There was no one else who was vegan in either of my
Ah,
classes. So
ah,
that really did kind of surprise me.
that's so,
I
yeah.
know.
Was that like, to me, that's incredibly annoying and frustrating.
I thought, and one of them one day, even this was just a strange aside. I heard her talking about how she got so tired of hearing vegans talk about, you know, basically preaching And then like 2 days later, somebody must have told her that I was vegan, and she came and apologized. She said, but what she had said was, if you're vegan, everybody's going to know it. Obviously, that was not true because I sat right next to her and she did not know it unless she would have just looked at my food. But we all ate together. You know, we all kind of gathered together in a common room to eat. But yes, she did come back and apologize and say that
Annoying.
I had not been preaching to her.
Right. And
Yeah.
she would have deserved it. Clearly. So what's it like, having this cookbook out in the world, and what's the response been so far?
The response has been really good so far. I'm actually really, really excited. So I had the first signing, and it was at something called the Kentucky Crafted Festival. It was at close to the horse park in Lexington. Actually, it's part of the horse park, I guess. And sold out of my cookbooks in like 30 minutes. So that was
Nice.
really a shock and
Very nice.
yeah, and very exciting.
Yeah.
And so I have an official book launch this weekend at the Tailless Dog, which is our local bookstore in Berea, and a little party after. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I have a lot of other like bookstore visits.
Very nice.
So it seems like, yeah, people are interested in it. And I've had coworkers tell me, they're going to try the recipes. And I'm like, yes, every plant-based meal, step in the right direction.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. What's kind of been the biggest surprise for you in terms of how people just relate to this book and the recipes?
Well, I mean, just the level of interest, I think. You have it in your head for so long, and then suddenly it's out there in the world, and like people are paying attention, which is just really gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And I'm sure it has to do with the fact that you're the genuine article. You're not someone from the outside who's like coming into this culture with these vegan recipes. You're someone who's part of that culture and creating these recipes.
Yeah, and I speak the comfort food language for them. Yeah, we all like those kind of, we like mashed potatoes and homemade bread.
Cornbread fan myself, so yeah, I could live on cornbread.
Oh gosh, you've got to try this one.
Believe me, I will. Believe me, I will. So have you ever had any like weight issues or health issues or anything, or has that just all been pretty seamless for you?
No, I've never really had any weight issues. I've been a very vertically challenged person my whole life, but stayed about the same size. And no, I really don't have anything that, my knees are kind of worn out, but that was probably from standing on a concrete floor in retail for many years. But other than that, no, I just have not got anything going on.
Yeah.
And, I am older. So
yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I love talking to women who don't have these issues that, often it seems like all women are struggling with weight and struggling with body image. So that's great that you avoided that.
Yeah. And I have quite the healthy appetite. So
So how do you manage it?
Because it gets commented on a little bit. What?
Really, people comment on your appetite?
They do. Yeah.
In what way? And in what settings?
Well, I eat quite a lot. So for somebody who's my size, I eat a lot, but I'm really active too.
Yeah.
I exercise a lot, and I do weights at home, and I do yoga every day, and I work full time, and so
yeah,
I need a lot of calories apparently.
How do you pack it all in? I mean, that's a lot, because I think people tend to assume that, someone who has a successful cookbook out in the world, like, she's a full-time cook and cookbook author and blogger, and and you have a whole a whole existence and professional world outside of that. So how do you fit it all in?
Well, I get a lot of sleep. So I would say that, and like in my quiet time, that is when I'm constantly thinking of what I'm going to cook next. So I'm a planner in my head.
Yeah.
So like the next meal is always getting planned in my head, like whose birthday it is. And so it's just kind of like either that's the music that plays for you or it isn't, I think.
Mm.
But I do always try to get a lot of rest. I do think that's super important for healing
Mm.
anything that might be wrong with you and for your just to have enough space to let your body just quiet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of yoga do you do? Is it a particular tradition that you practice?
It's just traditional hatha yoga.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
very slow pace, relaxing body, connecting mind, and a lot of stretching
Uh-huh.
and strength building. So strength, flexibility, relaxation, those are the things I like to focus on.
Nice. Nice. And are you teaching yoga as well?
I do. I teach once a week. On my day off, I teach a class here at a studio called the Yoga Space in Berea.
Nice. And have you managed to bring some veganism into that that world?
Honestly, the people who come to my class, one of them is one of my best friends, and she is already vegan. But I have the people who come to class, they will definitely come for some socializing and eat the vegan food.
So you bring food to your yoga classes as well?
No, they come to my
Oh,
house.
they come.
They're acquaintances too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice. So it sounds like you're just
yeah,
doing a lot of cooking for a lot of people all the time.
that is true.
I mean, that must get labor intensive and expensive too.
Well, it is my passion, and I'm willing to do it. It is all of those things. It is work.
Yeah.
Like I might be doing something like it, and also it really just takes the planning. Like I said, it's always what's going on in my mind. So if I know that I'm going to have a dinner in 2 or 3 days, I will do all the prep ahead of time. I like to chop. I find that calming. So I just try to stay organized about it.
Mm.
But it is an expense, but it is worth it to me because it is what I'm passionate about. And like I said, every plant-based meal is a step in the right direction.
Right. Right. And so tell me this, like over the course of your time as a vegan, which is substantial at this point, how have you evolved in terms of your dietary approaches or just the way you go about structuring your food and how you eat?
Well, I would say I never really got into it for just like nutrition reasons,
Yeah.
but I love vegetables. And so it's very easy for me to eat very whole foods based.
Mm.
So while I might be making a weekend meal that's going to have some desserts and things like that, for my dinners at home during the week, I might just have roasted tofu with butternut squash and Brussels sprouts. That's great to me. I love that.
Yeah.
So it's a balance of whole foods, but also I'm not ever gonna like deny myself. If I wanted a dessert, I would not be like, I'm not rigid, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm not very rigid as long as it does not involve harm to an animal. Here's an example. I went to get some Mentos the other day and it came up that I was vegan and the guy in the checkout was really shocked that I was buying Mentos, and I said, well, I like Mentos. So, and they are vegan. They're right on the PETA list. So if I want something like that, I will just get it. But
Yeah.
that is not what I subsist on by any means. I eat tons of greens and salad, and I mostly eat a very healthy diet. But if I want something outside of that, if it's vegan, it's fine in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you cook, so you cook a lot for yourself as well? It's not just for other people.
Cook pretty much every day.
Yeah.
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 I mean, a lot of times I have, like, for instance, tonight I will be having the leftover Irish stew, but I almost always have something cooked. I don't eat out very much, and it's not because there aren't things that are available. Even though this is a small town, there are a handful of places that I could go. But I enjoy cooking, and it's just never quite as good, I don't think,
Yeah.
as what you make at home.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, you're not going to beat your own cooking. Right. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm somewhere else, then of course I'm gonna have to get something. But if I'm close to home, and I pack my lunch almost every day too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you work in a pharmacy, in a retail location? Is that your work environment?
I work in a hospital.
At a hospital.
No, I work in a
Right. You
hospital now.
said, yeah. What is it like being in that environment as a vegan?
Well, they're all used to me now. So it's not It's really, I will say that there's almost nothing that the cafeteria has that I can eat.
Really?
Like it's so extreme. It's so extreme that if the like half of the hospital knows if they're having broccoli, they'll alert me because they don't put anything on their broccoli. They're like, "Hey, Jan, there's broccoli in the cafeteria today."
That's
And sometimes because I love
horrifying.
broccoli so much, I'll go down and get some. Yeah, everything has got, either butter or something like that on it. So there's really, that's probably the worst thing. They do have salad bar, but of course they would have no dressing that I could eat. So occasionally, I might go down and get like some cucumbers and broccoli or something off of the salad bar, but most of the time I just take my lunch.
Wow.
So that's probably, but I mean, it wasn't a lot different in retail either. If I got to leave for a few minutes to get some lunch, there was like a Hardee's and a McDonald's. When you live in a small town, you just don't have a lot of options.
Sure, but you would think, I mean, I know this is not the case, but you'd like to think that food served in a hospital, especially a hospital cafeteria, would at least have some healthy options.
They don't have any vegan options except for the salad or on broccoli day.
And I totally believe it because I know that often hospitals
Yeah.
have contracts with fast food chains and, just the level of willful ignorance and corporate corruption and whatever.
Or just what people are still demanding. You would think with the dietitian there that would come into play a little bit, but I just so far don't think that people who are graduating with that as their degree have figured it out either, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like you said, people may supposedly be demanding these foods, but do they really want them, or is it just the marketing? I don't know if you've come across the book Meatonomics, but it's all about just the advertising and the government subsidies that keep prices of dairy and meat and eggs artificially low, and the government funded programs to increase demand for these products. So government funded advertising. And so like you've alluded to, we all,
Definitely all that,
yeah,
yeah, comes into play for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read that particular book though.
It's really interesting. And then there was a book, or not a book, but a movie. The movie Plant Pure Nation. Have you come across that one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I
No?
think that was one I saw it at Vegan Summerfest a few years ago, but essentially it was featured. I could be getting some of these details wrong, but I believe it was one of Dr. T. Colin Campbell's sons, who's a doctor, who is bringing
Huh?
a whole food plant-based nutrition intervention program into churches, and it had
Yeah.
been very successful, and they wanted to introduce a free program in the state of Kentucky. And again, I could be getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Kentucky. And it was going to be a free program, no cost to anybody, proven to significantly improve health outcomes and help people with these chronic issues and underprivileged populations. And then the night before it was going to be voted on in the legislature, big food swooped in and lobbyists and talked senators and the state congressmen out of, into voting against this free program that would have helped a lot of people. I could be butchering those.
So Plant Pure Nation.
Yeah, that was the name of the movie. Yeah, again, we think we're making these free choices, and that's the common wisdom. Well, people have the right to eat what they want to eat, and of course they do. But when there's this government and corporate influence that is, infiltrating everything, and so how free are our decisions really is the question. But again, like you, I'm just lucky to now have the
Like the recruit.
information and be empowered with the
Yeah.
information. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I can only imagine going into a hospital every day and just not being able to find know that like it's news if there's broccoli, like untarnished broccoli in the
Yeah.
cafeteria. That's
Yeah.
terrifying. But
They used to have veggie burgers for a little while. So for a while, I was just known as. That was when I first started working there, and I think people just called me Veggie Burger. I think they thought that was my name, but now it's just broccoli. I'm just broccoli. They don't have veggie burgers ever anymore.
Wow.
But
Wow. Well,
it's okay. I have plenty of food cooked most of the
right,
time.
right. Yeah, and that's my response to people all the time too. If I'm at an event or something and people say, oh, they're almost apologizing. I'm so sorry, there's nothing you can eat. And I'll think to
Yeah,
myself or sometimes say to them, like, you don't have to worry about me. Like I'm the one person in this room who's doing fine. It's everybody
yeah,
else that maybe, they're like, I consider myself the lucky one. I'm going to be fine not eating for a few
right.
hours at an event or just sticking to the veggie plate or something. Yeah. Well, I've
Yeah,
got just a
true.
couple more questions for you. So interesting
Okay.
hearing your path and just your diverse, interesting life. You clearly don't believe in staying in your lane, which I respect because I I live life the same way, like having lots of
Yeah,
irons in the fire. But tell me this, like one thing, especially for a lot of our women guests, a lot of them find that veganism, it does throw a wrench in the works when it comes to romantic relationships and dating. And if that's something you're
you're
comfortable
exactly
talking
right.
about, yeah, what's any tips or any experience
Yeah,
to share in that regard?
I have just decided I cannot date somebody who is not a vegan. That's a pretty recent decision. Luckily, I do have someone in my life who is vegetarian working toward vegan. It's been a little on again, off again, but then the last time that I had a date with somebody who was not a vegan, I just thought it's just not going to work. This is just too much of who I am. It is too important to me. And so if I can't find a good vegan, it's going to be me and Josie.
Right, right. And Josie,
He is a vegan dog too.
right. And Josie, for people listening, is your dog, is your little dachshund, correct?
Yes, yeah,
And it's
that's
funny
correct.
because in my novel, Marrying Myself, Josie is the name of the protagonist's mother. So Josie is a special,
Oh,
yes, it's a special name.
it's a good name. I
Yes,
like
it's a
that.
good name.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Josie is also a vegan dog
Nice.
and has done really well with the vegan diet.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Yes, I have a stepdog named Daisy who's also a vegan. And in fact, my dearly departed cat, Sammy, he was a vegan as well. For he did great. He did great. Well, when it comes to the dating, in terms of finding a vegan man, how much space, if any, will you give somebody to be exposed to the information to express some interest? Because obviously there are very few pre-existing vegan men.
That is true. I would say that within a few days they would have to say, "Yes, I think you are so great. I'm willing to give this a try."
Oh,
I would say 3 or 4.
yeah.
Yeah. Before they could at least entertain they know whether they like you well enough that they're willing to make that kind of life change.
Yeah.
And of course, they would have had to have had my cooking too. I would give them at least one try at having a nice vegan meal.
Right, right. So they're not making the decision in a vacuum based on what they think vegan cooking tastes
Right.
like. Yeah, they know that it can
Yes.
be delicious
Thinking it
comfort
something.
food. Yes, yes. Yeah. It sounds like a
Yes.
solid strategy, I have to say, Jan. Yeah. Yeah. And fingers crossed for the, vegan leaning vegetarian.
The on again, off
Yeah.
again.
I
Yeah.
don't know if he deserves fingers crossed, but, you know, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
He is a vegetarian,
Yeah.
so there's that.
There's that. Yeah. It's something, at least the word I think is helpful.
It is, especially in this area. I
Mm,
mean, this area is going to be different than a city.
right.
It is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really encouraging that your son's wives are vegetarian. Was that your doing?
No,
No?
it was not. They were both vegetarian before. They're both like very soft-hearted little animal-loving people,
Hmm.
and they just were just naturally that way.
And your boys just couldn't resist them.
Yep. I think no. Yeah,
That's sweet.
I'm very lucky. They're really great daughter-in-laws. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's the best place for people to pick up a copy of your amazing cookbook, the Modern Mountain Cookbook?
Well, you can get it directly from University Press of Kentucky. It's available on Amazon. It's available at most local bookstores.
Wonderful. And it sounds like you have some book events. Do you have an author website that people can visit to keep track of
I
events?
do not have an author website. I have a website that is called Vegan Apothecarian, and that you can link through my Instagram. You can link through that, and a lot of the recipes that are in the cookbook I have prepared, and they're out there on Instagram. This is a cookbook that does not have photos, but a lot of those foods are available to see on my Instagram account because I take a lot of pictures of them.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, that sounds amazing. I'm sure it tastes amazing. And yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and interesting path. And I'm sure there's a lot more to come given your wide ranging interests. Who knows when the next retreat will happen. Yeah. um,
That would be nice.
yeah. And we close every episode by taking 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So, Jan, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals, and we'll conclude with the sound of the bell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Posse. See you next time.
Thank
Until
you.
then, stay strong and stay true.
Thank you. Bye.